for children, nature-focused outdoor programs for children. And our mission, our stated mission is to foster a generation of people who enjoy and know and love and actively care for the earth and all of the earth's citizens. And so obviously that's a very wide-reaching goal. The basics are we take kids on nature field trips. We have an after-school program in the school year, and a caveat to this is a lot of this will be talking about what we did before the pandemic, and we'll probably touch on how the pandemic has changed things. But before the pandemic, we'd have an after-school program every day, and then a preschool age or a program for young children, 3 to 5-year-olds during the day. And then all summer long, we do week-long summer camps. And the whole purpose of everything we do is to get, or I shouldn't say that. The main thing we do is to get kids in nature and to do it a lot. So not just the 1 or 2 field trips they might get at school, but 1 or more times a week, and to put them in nature a lot. That's what we do. And then what happens is there's lots of stuff that happens when we do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. And it being, one of the teachers in Taproot, I can definitely say that wonderful, wonderful program, and it does so much for kids in this community. So thank you, Zac. Truly, it's a
mutually beneficial arrangement.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yes. So what kind of led you to start Taproot?
I'm a teacher by training. I spent 6 years teaching in Iowa City in a regular classroom setting, and I sort of fell into teaching accidentally, which I think happens to a lot of people. It wasn't what I intended to do growing up, but then I think, as happens with a lot of people, I volunteered in a classroom and volunteered with some after-school programs, and found that I really loved it and felt competent, and it felt important. And so that took me, the obvious choice there is teaching in a classroom. So that's what I did. And then realized quickly, but it grew over the course of those 6 years in the classroom, that I didn't like teaching in a classroom, that it was oppressive to me. And not only that, I just wasn't very good at it. And a lot of the things that I was a kid who did not like to be in school. And looking back, I probably could have guessed that I wouldn't like being in school as a teacher either. And some funny things that I remember are that often my kids, my students would have to remind me that it was time for recess to be over. And, they'd have to tell me, the teacher, that we had to go in now, and because I didn't want to. And so eventually, so I became less and less happy in that role. And my wife and I had been brainstorming. She could see that I wasn't happy, and we had been thinking about ways that I could make a living and make a positive difference in the world. Thinking about different ways to fulfill my role as a human, and at the same time make a living. And so at the end of one school year, we sort of crafted the idea of the Taproot after school program, and just took the leap, bought a van, and started Taproot just with one van and myself, and small groups of kids going out after school. and it has grown. It's grown steadily since then.
And so part of Taproot, yes, is being outside, getting kids outdoors, but it is more than that. So what do you think are the important skills or concepts that children learn from an outdoor education experience?
It is absolutely more than just being outside and learning about nature. And I didn't even realize that. I mean, I have learned so much about children over the course of these years, and the goal of Taproot, not the goal, the mission has evolved over the years as I've learned more about what happens, and just my understanding of what happens has evolved. So, in answer to your, or in an attempt to answer your question, kids learn. So the thing that I originally started with was I wanted kids to have an opportunity to do what I did automatically, and what people in my generation often did just as a part of their life, which was spend lots of time left to their own devices outside. And the cliche, which is true, which is what cliches usually are, is that your parents would kick you out of the house in the morning, and you would come back when the streetlights came on or later. And the whole day you'd be out guiding your own play, your own exploration. And in that way, you would develop, and most kids, I think, in certainly in my circles, and I would say in almost every circle, are drawn to the nature areas. And there are nature areas almost everywhere. It doesn't have to be an expansive park or a wilderness. It can be a vacant lot. It can be an alley. A lot of my nature experience as a kid came in the alley. And so what I wanted to give kids, and I knew about this, so I hadn't read Last Child in the Woods, which is sort of a seminal work about, and it's the book that coined the phrase nature deficit disorder. But I could see it. I could see that kids were not getting time in contact with nature, and were increasingly seeing themselves as disconnected, as separate from nature and not a part of it, and uncomfortable with it. And I knew that was bad. I didn't exactly know why. It just felt wrong and dangerous to me. And I also worried about, and this wasn't my idea, I was hearing it from all directions, but I also could see it, how parents were increasingly feeling like they had to manage their children and had to manage their time, and schedule their time to fill it up as much as possible with productive things, and also wanted to keep them safe, and were increasingly fearful about what might happen to their children if they let them out of their supervision. And I feel like I need to acknowledge that that this was what I was seeing in my own personal surroundings, and hearing about in my population that I was familiar with. And what I mean by that is, I know that there were kids who were getting this alone time, and there are other kids and family structures all over the world that don't actually fit this description. But what I was seeing was parents that were intensively managing their kids' time, and parents who were worried and afraid to let their kids be alone and be out of their supervision because of their safety. So what I wanted to do was provide an opportunity, or provide a space for kids to guide themselves and choose for themselves what they wanted to do, but with supervision, so they would be safe, but that I was going to take a largely hands-off, largely really relaxed position of letting them do what they wanted to do. Um, and as I mentioned before, that's how it started. And not even really knowing what would happen, just knowing that they needed that. Just with the feeling that that was important for kids, and I wanted to give them that without any promises that it would raise their test scores or that it would make them happier, just knowing that good things would happen. And so that's how it started. That was the original goal, and the original idea was to let kids have unstructured or very loosely structured time to themselves, but with the supervision and safety part, both so they don't get hurt, because I don't want kids to get hurt. What I believed, and now I believe it even more strongly, is that kids are very good at not getting hurt.
Yes, you just have to give them some trust.
Right. And that's hard. And another thing that I believed, because I had observed it in myself, and I had observed it in kids for years in the classroom, that kids are so different when their parents are not there. And they're so often much more capable of taking care of themselves when their parents are not there.
Yes, we underestimate, how.
And none of this is a criticism of parents. I'm a parent myself, and I have all these feelings, and absolutely none of it is a criticism of parents. It's just an acknowledgement that it's almost impossible to know what your kids, like you'd have to have some way of watching them or knowing what they do when you're not there. And the stakes are so high. Like if you're wrong about it and your child gets hurt, or kidnapped, then of course it's not worth it. But I could see that it was true, that kids are capable of so much more when their parents are not there. So I'm getting off track, but the purpose was to give parents peace of mind, that their kids would have this time in nature and would be supervised, and then give the kids the opportunity to guide themselves and learn for themselves.
So in my experience with Taproot and the several outings that I've been with you on, there is also a special relationship that forms between kids, and not just what is benefiting them, but the way they learn to interact with other kids, the way they kind of learn to watch out for each other. Do you notice that as well?
Absolutely. They do tend to and it's not consistent every time, and it doesn't happen the same way every time, but they do form bonds. They do tend to take care of themselves, or I should say take care of each other. And then what you sort of touched on, the kindness and interaction and respect and acknowledgement that's so important in human relationships. I realized how much of an important part that was of Taproot as well. Not just the individual kids' need to explore and exercise and learn about nature, but that it was also a really great environment to help kids learn how to interact with each other in a kind and respectful and aware way with each other. And I would say that became over the years, that became as important a part of Taproot's mission as the nature learning was this was this social emotional learning, and the learning that the kids had to solve conflicts, which is constant. And that's not meaning that kids fight all the time. A conflict is not always a fight. I mean, they do fight a lot, but just the ability to listen to each other and work things out and communicate. I realized that was one of the most important things they were getting at Taproot, and that the setting of a creek or of a log bridge across a creek, or any of these natural settings, was the best place to learn it. It's just the best setting for almost every kind of learning. I shouldn't say that. The best setting for lots of these, I mean, it may not be the best setting, for the learning that they have to do no, scratch that. It's the best setting for these base instinctive type of human element types of learning, like how to get along with others.
Is there,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, I told Lydia, for everyone who's listening, I told Lydia ahead of time that she should feel free to interrupt me and ask a different question if I'm going on too long about something, because that is a problem that I have. So she has permission to stop me from talking mid-sentence. That's fine.
Oh, and also feel free, guys, the participants on this call, to send in questions through the chat if you're curious about something, and we'll try to get to those at the end, or at the end we could just go around, raise our hands with any questions. So, but going back to our conversation, is there also kind of this hope that you are inspiring kind of future environmentally friendly, individuals that do care about, their ecosystem, their community?
Absolutely. It is so Taproot is my effort to do my part to save the world. We all want to find that. I'm sure that that's at the core of almost every person, is to find their spot in the world and their contribution to helping the world. And I think that so when I look at the world, I see a planet that's in big trouble environmentally, and that's easy to see everywhere you look. The planet is sick, and the causes of that are all over the place. And so one thing that we say in Taproot, and we say it in a joking way, but I make it clear in the conversation with the kids. I say, we are a superhero training camp. That Taproot, you may think, and your parents may think, that they sent you to nature camp or to an after-school nature program, but really, this is superhero training camp. And they're like, well, no, it's not. It's nature camp. I'm like, no, really. And the one thing that I've had to be really careful about, because I love to tell stories, and sometimes I tell, I make up stuff that I assume the kids will know that I'm like, make up stuff about the bus that we ride in being like the magic school bus and all these wonderful things that it can do. And for a while I thought, of course these kids know I'm just telling a story that's not actually true in real life. But I realized after talking to kids and talking to their parents that a lot of the kids actually like fully believe it. Like if Zac says it's true, it's true. And so I one thing, I have to be careful what I tell kids, but I also learned that, is that Flora? Did I see? One of my dear friends just checked in. Hi, Flora. Is that, if I say this is superhero training camp, well, a lot of these kids know their idea of superheroes. And so when I say that and the kids protest, and then I say, no, it really is. And then sometimes I see their eyes widen and they look like, did you know that? Did you know that words? Yeah. And then I go into it so that it's honest, like, and saying, you kids are going to be superheroes. You're going to grow up and you're going to save the world. And part of what you need in order to do that is to learn how to, and then we go through this is the introductory talk. So then we go through how to keep ourselves safe, how to treat each other with unconditional positive regard, how to say what we need what we need from others and how to listen when others tell us what they need from us, and how to protect the soil and the water and the animals and the plants and heal the earth. And so, yes, so Taproot, trying to circle back to your question that started this, helping kids communicate with each other, communicate with other human beings, is not separate from helping like teaching kids to stop environmental destruction. They are inextricably linked. And so all of that, yes, I am hoping that these kids, all of them, will grow up and they will have in their minds and in their spirits things that they learned at Taproot, then for the rest of their lives, whenever they make decisions for their lives, whether it be a huge decision like what career path they want to pursue, or whether or small decisions like whether they eat hamburgers today, or which actually is not that small of a decision, but all their decisions that will affect whether they contribute to the death of the earth or to the healing of the earth.
Yeah, I definitely see that confidence that's happening in, with Taproot kids. And really they're building, self-confidence, and they're not scared to go out and do something about, these concerning issues that you're talking about. And they're very Taproot kids, they're very willful. They're very, well, at least, after a couple times in Taproot, they figure it out. Like, I got this. I'm very, I have confidence. So I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Well, so to add to that, Lydia, there are lots of little things that happen, and I say little things in comparison to actually saving the world. The little things of confidence and increased increased ability to relax and be calm and happy. Those things happen almost immediately. And it's very fun to watch and see. But then beyond that, really my hope for Taproot is really wide ranging. And it's so yeah, I see it as my life's work.
And so besides being a director of superhero training, how have you dealt with the pandemic? How has it affected Taproot?
Well, it has. So thankfully, it doesn't completely shut down Taproot, because where we operate is the safest place to be for this particular pandemic. Being outside is the safest. It has business-wise and logistics-wise, it's really cut down on what we can do, because when we're actually outside playing, I have no worries about coronavirus. It's the fringe stuff, getting the kids in the van, getting them to where they need to go, and if the weather. So we're outdoors whenever we can, unless the weather's dangerous. And so we do sometimes have to go indoors. And because of the particulars of this pandemic, I just won't do it. And so we've cut way back. But thankfully, for our business operations and being able to keep going with Taproot, it's not gonna cancel us. But we have had to cut way back. But I can see the programs that we do offer people. I mean, it's exactly what a lot of people want and crave, is getting their kids out and playing and around other kids, because that's one of the biggest things that they've been missing.
Yeah, it's definitely been tough for everyone. And, now more than ever, people are looking to get outdoors, and it's kind of a mixed bag here. It's like we have kids that are going to be, they're on computers quite a bit now, but it's also, there's this push
Yeah.
to be outside. So it's a
Yeah.
really interesting time for kids right
Totally is.
now.
I mean, I think interesting is a very valuable way to describe it. And mixed bag too. There's like the experience is all over. Like for me personally and my family, we're in a very secure position to get through this. And obviously a lot of people are not. But it does seem like people's experiences during the pandemic has really helped them or caused them to reframe what they think is important. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so you made it through the pandemic, and Taproot has been around since 2007. And so there's been there's been an increase in groups offering nature-based education
Mhm.
nationwide, not just locally within the last 3 years. So what's made your program work for so long?
Well, one thing is hard work. I mean, I should say right off the bat, my wife Elisa, it wouldn't have happened without her, and it wouldn't keep going without her. It is a lot of hard work, um, and sorry, Lydia, I lost my train of thought. Talked about my
Okay.
wife, and all my thoughts go out of my head. Um, so. What's made it work? Well, I haven't seen any other programs anywhere in the country that are quite the same. And I have wondered about that, why it doesn't happen elsewhere. Um, it's a structure that I haven't seen either. And like a lot of times, parents will ask me, so for summer camps, do you have a different theme each week? Like like some camps do Pirate Week and others do Aquatic Creatures Week, and we don't. Well, like our theme every Taproot, I shouldn't say every Taproot, but the vast majority of Taproots, our theme is what can we find outside, like nature.
Yeah,
Or
I think that very unstructured type of play and experience goes a long way. And in my experience with Taproot, at first when you'd asked me to join and be one of the teachers, it was very jarring to me at first, like, oh, we're just gonna let them do whatever. But I mean,
yeah,
we'll be there to facilitate, but they can choose their own adventure, basically, which I think is really it's
and
just.
that's, I think that's another key part of it, Lydia, is that they have freedom. And I've begun, I really my the way I talk to the kids has evolved a lot as I've learned more, and I've begun just being really really upfront and transparent about what it is I'm trying to give them. And freedom is something that a lot of them don't have much experience with, and it is so appealing. It's so appealing down to their very like essence. Having people trust you and having freedom to choose whatever you want to do. The kids love that, and especially, and it helps to be uh, in a setting where lots of fun stuff is possible. So that does help, and that's a lot of the work that we go into, is selecting places. Like it's a lot of thought and trying to tell the future and trying to look at a place and see how kids will use that place, try to predict how they're going to use that place, as well as try to predict what the dangers are there, what the possible difficulties of that place are. But our model of like pretty much not having a structure, I think, is one of the main reasons it is so successful with kids. When I really start to think about it, there's a lot more that goes into it, um, but most of that is behind the scenes. And one of the most gratifying things about Taproot. One of the things that gives my heart the most joy is having these kids who have done Taproot for many years. We groom them to come back and teach for Taproot. Not all of them. A lot of them, like, it'd be fun for me to see what percentage of kids stay with Taproot and come back to teach, but it's quite a few. And I love to hear when they will often say some form of, I never realized what the Taproot teachers are doing to set this up. It always just felt like it just happened. But there is a lot that the teachers do to set up this experience so that the kids can have their freedom and have this great experience. So it's gratifying to me to hear that, because that is really nice for my ego. But it's also the gratifying part is that some of these kids really are called to it and want to keep doing it, and they're awesome teachers. Those kids that grow up in Taproot and then come back to be teachers are wonderful.
So we know that, freedom to do, choose your own adventure, to be outside without much structure is really beneficial, and kids really respond to it very well. So what would you say to parents who are just kind of afraid to make that part of their routine, or feel that they always have to go to these structured programs?
Well, one thing is to believe that it's important, but it isn't just as simple as, it really isn't as simple as just kicking your kid out the door now. Sometimes it kind of is, but especially if your child doesn't have experience with that, because it's a thing that the child needs to get better at too. But scheduling in time to, and I hate to say that, but it is necessary to schedule that time now. And trusting that, let's see, let me back up. One of the things that I have come to learn, and it takes time. Sometimes I'll get to a Taproot day and I just don't feel ready, and it's time to go get the kids, but I just don't actually know what we're going to do, because each Taproot excursion, I like to have an idea, even if I say to the kids, I don't know what we're going to do. I still like to have an idea what the kids are going to do, and so sometimes I'm not ready, and I kind of maybe know where we're going to go, or even sometimes I don't make the decision until I'm actually pulling up to the school and picking up the kids. That's not often. That's not what I aim for, but once in a while it happens. And what I've learned so many times is that even if I don't know what's going to happen, and that gives me anxiety, because what I don't want is a bunch of kids. And I'm trying to pull this all together. But what I don't like at Taproot, like an unsuccessful Taproot day, and this doesn't happen much, and it's almost never for like a whole thing. It might happen for a few minutes at a time, is when enough kids don't know what to do, that they start complaining, or they start fighting with each other, or they start misbehaving in a way that is not respectful, not friendly, not safe. And so that usually happens, that'll happen when there's not something obvious right that moment. I mean, there's all kinds of factors that contribute to that. And so I really am afraid of that situation, because it's super unpleasant and it makes me feel unsuccessful. But it happens so often that even if I'm afraid of that, and I go in and I trust the kids and I trust nature, I trust the earth to help the kids find something to do. And it happens so often that you just go to a place, even if you don't know what you're going to do, you go to a healthy, natural place, and something will happen. And a lot of times it's a challenge. And I talk to teachers, and Lydia, maybe I've said things like this to you before, because a lot of times when I'm sitting back and watching the kids, and maybe there's nothing obviously good happening. Maybe they're just sort of milling around and kind of not sure what to do. My urge as a teacher and as a parent is to jump in and like manage it, get them going on a game, tell them what to do. And like, because that's what I want to have happen, but also because I feel like that's what parents are paying for. They're paying for their kids to be productively engaged in something. But I have to remind myself, like, just give it a while. And so I'll often tell teachers that, because I get self-conscious about the teachers, because like the teachers that I work with, I don't want them to be nervous. I don't want them to feel like they're supposed to be doing something, or like, since we're not actively managing the kids right now, that we're not doing our jobs. And so I'll kind of hang back with the teacher and say, I just want to let you know, I feel okay with this. I know that we're not, like, the kids aren't obviously doing anything right now. And I'm really overgeneralizing, because in a group of 12 kids, like, there might be a group over here that's totally engaged in something productive, but maybe there's 3 or 4 or 6 kids who aren't. And of course, they're the ones we often focus on.
So, yeah, and sometimes honestly, they just want to relax and lay on the ground.
And I've gotten better about telling kids that exact thing. Like, kids, you don't have to do anything here. It is absolutely okay if you don't feel like doing something, or if you don't know what to do. It's totally okay. And I really encourage you to just go find a comfortable spot and sit down and do nothing.
Yeah, it's nice to just sometimes for them to just sit and reflect and enjoy being outdoors.
Yeah. And they don't even have to do that. Like, because that, even that, and you're right, I don't disagree with you, but they don't even have to put that pressure on themselves. And I remind myself of that too, that even if, so some Taproot days, like, I leave the Taproot day, or I'm there at the Taproot day, and I'm thinking, like, this is so awesome. These kids are doing such good work, and this is just amazing. And that's what I love, and that's what I'm aiming for. But not every day is like that. It's not obvious what's going on, but I have to remind myself, and I like to remind the kids and the other teachers that that just being there is a success, that nature itself is healthy for us, and therapeutic and good for us. I don't like to say therapeutic because that implies sickness, but it's good for us just to be there. So even if we go out to a prairie and we just lay in the grass for the whole time for 2 hours, they're absolutely better for it.
I totally agree. I mean, even having a plant in the office makes me feel better.
Yeah. So I guess trying to loop back here for parents, I would say, don't feel like you have to have an intricate plan. I do think it's helpful to have a bit of a plan, and to pick the spot. And I definitely, like, fallen trees, a creek, like moving water is always good. I shouldn't say that. It's not always good. But it can be very good if it's the right moving water. Logs to climb on. Like, it's nice to have stuff like that's obviously attractive to kids. But even just going outside in any natural setting, even if you don't have a plan, it's still going to be better than not doing it. And often, and this is another thing a point that I was trying to make, often wonderful things will happen that you just didn't even predict, because nature and kids, they're natural teammates. And that's a concept that I remind myself. Nature and kids go together naturally. They belong together. And kids have, all humans, but especially kids, they have in themselves a love of nature and a knowledge of what to do. And often all they need is just a little space in a good spot.
Yeah, kids are very naturally curious, and they're sponges. They absorb everything in their environment, and they just are so receptive to learning and
Mhm.
everything. But I wanted to switch switch topics, and before we get into some of the questions, spend a little bit of time talking about technology. How do you deal with having basically, access to all the answers at your fingertips, but purposely staying away from that? And do Taproot kids know that technology is that kind of the usefulness of technology, and what the expectation is in Taproot as far as technology goes?
This is a really important factor, and more all the time. We started in 2007, so that's like 14 years ago, and things have changed so much even then. And things in 2007 were way different than when I was younger, and things now are way different than they were in 2007. And so this is always evolving, the relationship between Taproot and technology and screens in particular. So most Taproot kids who have done Taproot for any length of time know that it's a no screens zone for kids. Now this is a tough thing, because I always have my phone, and I often have it out because it's what I use to take pictures. I take a ton of pictures, and I also sometimes have to communicate with parents or check the weather or something. So what I'm striving for, and again, I got to stress, I don't know what the right answer is. And so it's always, I'm always trying to learn what to do with technology and Taproot. You mentioned the ability to have, and we've all heard it 1,000 times before, we have a supercomputer in our pocket that's capable of so much. We have the ability to answer just about any nature question we come across, or at least to spend a lot of time, scrolling through Google options. And I don't do that. There's a few things that I have a pretty, and I wouldn't say a solid rule, because there's exceptions to everything, but I have a pretty solid rule. We don't look up nature questions when we're out at Taproot, even though it's often suggested. Kids know that you can do that, but we don't do it while we're out at Taproot. And I'll tell them it's because I don't want to know what Google thinks this is. I want to know what you think it is. And I want you to figure it out. And I say, please, when you get home, look it up, if you can remember to look it up, because I always forget, or not always, but I often forget. And I say, yeah, fine. When you get home, definitely look it up and let me know what you find out. But when we're out there, we don't look stuff up. The other thing we don't do is, the kids see me taking pictures, and they'll often say, yeah, let me see it. Can I see it? Because lots of us are in the habit of taking a picture, looking at it, taking a picture, looking at it, taking a picture, showing it, taking a picture, showing. And I said, no, we don't do that at Taproot. So yeah, our relationship with technology. What I don't want to do, and some kids get this misconception, and then I try to gently clarify, I'm not anti-technology at all. I think technology and human innovation is what's awesome about humans. Is one of them.
There's a time and a place, though.
Yeah. Yes.
Everything in moderation.
Well, and right. And that's an important concept. So I try to strike a balance between being a friend of technology and an appreciative consumer of technology. But I also want time where it's not intrusive into our lives, where kids get to be human and make their own discoveries and such. So I guess those would be things I would recommend to parents, is that they have time where their kids don't, well, and another thing is, kids they're not allowed to have phones. at Taproot. And I don't want that to be a mean rule. Like, I don't want it to be a punitive thing. And so I explained to them, I want to give you time. And even though you might not feel like you want time without your phone, I know that your body needs it and appreciates it. So we want time where it's just not even a factor for them. So I would recommend coming up with some things like that for parents when they go out in nature, to have time where the kid does not have access to a phone. And if the parent takes pictures, don't show them right then. Live the experience right then. Pictures are super valuable, and I love looking at them later when you're remembering the day, but don't look at them at the time.
I agree. I think it's really important to get in the habit of building some critical thinking skills instead of having something tell you what's going on. But it's so much nicer to just use your imagination and problem solve, really. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I'm going to go into one of the questions here is interesting. From Dave Collins. Hi, Zac, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
How do we get more kids of color and race involved in nature? They are the future stewards of our environment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this is probably the most important deficiency of Taproot. The kids that come to Taproot overwhelmingly come from families who have means. And here that means mainly white people and people with money. And these kids, while they do need nature, but you're right that we need more people of lesser means, and specifically people of color. And I don't have a good answer. I should say I don't have a good answer for what I've done specifically, because there are some challenges. One reason that our model works is because the parents are able to bring their kids or pick them up. Like a lot of families of color can and do. I mean, we do have families of color that participate, but a lot of the kids who might benefit the most can't get there. And so we have ideas of things to do, and I guess the honest answer is I just haven't worked hard enough to make it happen. And I have all kinds of excuses for why that is, but it's becoming more and more clear that the excuses just don't work anymore, or they never did, but they definitely do less and less. So trying to think of which direction to take this. So one thing to do is to be in contact with schools, because the teachers know. Who might benefit, and then reach out to those kids. But what I realized, and during the pandemic, we did more neighborhood work, so I'll tell a story, and I'm uncomfortable about this. It's a deficiency, but we had this great idea, or I thought it was a great idea, that we were going to save 20 spots, and they were going to be full scholarship spots. And those spots were reserved for people from lower socioeconomic groups, and specifically people of color. So we have the spots in Taproot. And so I called a good friend who's involved has always been involved with working with neighborhood centers, and is my contact. And I'm saying this, I hope everyone can either understand or believe me, that acknowledging my naivety and my need for learning here, and this is part of the learning process. And so I called up this person, and I said, okay, we've got the spots. Can you help me find the kids? And her response, I won't go into too much detail, but the summary is, you're doing it like all white people, or like white people so frequently want to do it. They want to do it on their terms, and if it doesn't work on their terms, they don't want to do it. And so like the boiled down harsh version of what I was trying to do is like, hook me up with 20 kids of color for my program, so that I can feel like I'm doing a good thing. And it just doesn't work that way. And so what this person helped me understand was that in order for this to work, it's going to be a longer term. Because one of the things is, a lot of these families of color are just not tuned in to Taproot at all. Don't even know it exists. And even if they did, it's not necessarily their style. So in order for me to be effective in bringing what I have to offer, I have knowledge of nature and knowledge of working with kids. Well, I have knowledge of working with the kids I've been working with, but I need to get to know them better. And I need to go in and allow myself to be better known. So in answer to your question, or in very small partial answer to your question, one of the things that I realize I need to do is go to them rather than having these, and I'm going to say children of color, because that's really who, like, yes, low socioeconomic group of any color, but specifically children of color.
There was, sorry, Zach. There was a comment in the chat that said, could you partner with big brothers and big sisters to help with transportation issues? So I think, you don't have to
making the plan, just doing the work, to figure out how it's physically going to work on the earth to get kids here and there. And so that really, that's the simple answer, is I just got to make the time and make the contacts with the people who can help, like Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County is really, we've been friends with them for a long time, and we have done a lot, but not nearly enough. And
those are definitely two absolutely wonderful groups that do work with a lot of underprivileged youth. So
we haven't done nothing, but we haven't done enough, and I would say it's the number one priority.
I'm gonna move to another question. What is this one's a little bit more lighthearted. What is one of your favorite moments when you realized what you were doing was effective?
Well, that last part makes it a harder question. I've got lots of favorite moments. When I realized it was effective, well, like I told you about kids coming back. There was a kid, and this has happened in various levels of intensity, but we had a kid who came to Taproot for several years, from the time that this kid was probably in first grade till they went to junior high. And they would literally storm out of the school, and the teacher would be storming after them. And like the teacher just was at their wit's end and could not handle this kid anymore. And the kid couldn't handle it anymore either. Like, he would come out of the school just thrashing and throwing his books, and then would get into the Taproot van and would just transform. And again, and I have to be really careful, this is not a criticism of teachers. It's an acknowledgement of the limitations of that setting. That this particular kid, and as I said, this has happened many times. This was the most intense example of it, where it was so evident that the moment this kid got into an environment where he was free and trusted and didn't have walls holding him in, didn't have rules holding him in, he was a completely different child. And it gradually dissipated, where his getting the nature time helped him calm down. I'm sure other things helped him calm down too. But over time, he really changed. But that was a fun thing. And I would hear teachers, a couple of times I heard teachers say that, they could tell the kids that went to Taproot. They could tell which ones, even if they didn't know, just because of the way they acted. Now, that's really, I know that it's not that simple. And I know that a lot of that is, I love hearing it because we all love getting stuff, compliments like that. But I hope those are satisfied. Like one of the questions that Lydia prepped me with was, what's a fun memory of Taproot? And I'm like, oh man, how can I ever choose? But just seeing the transformation of kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet that was just, a wonderful moment. I mean, it's unfortunate that he felt that way in school, but kind of a wonderful moment. So yeah. I understand how you can, appreciate that. So we're nearing the end of this AMA, but Zac, if you're willing to maybe answer one more question or one or two, if they come in.
Sure. I actually am. I've open-ended this evening and I'm having a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So yes, I would be grateful for any questions.
Wonderful. So we'll stay on a little bit longer for questions. So if you have any, the participants have any questions, feel free to send those in. But if you're leaving us at 7, thank you so much. Awesome having this participation. Really appreciate that. One question here that is kind of interesting. Shouldn't adults be educating kids, for example, when they're on a hike? Is there a difference between kids asking questions and having adults answer and Googling?
Great question. And I don't think there's an absolute right answer, but one thing so for one, trying to get a kid to pay attention to what I think is important is a hassle. It's hard, and I don't like to do it. So I often don't, unless there's something I really think is important. So in nature, lessons and stuff to learn is everywhere. And what you focus on as an adult, and what you think as the nature teacher or nature guide or parent, I would encourage people to kind of let go of what they think they're supposed to teach the kids. Because one, it's ineffective. If you're trying to teach a kid what a maple tree looks like and they're not interested, they're not going to learn what a maple tree looks like, probably, unless you do it over and over and over, which is going to make them not want to go hiking with you. And so I let go of, I try to let go. All of this is try. It's my goal to let go of having anything that I really want to teach the kids, want to teach them in a, I know this and now I want you to know it. So that's one thing, because it really is arbitrary kind of what you choose to teach them and what you choose to focus on. So I'm not sure the structure of the question, but no, I don't think that's a requirement. And in fact, I think it's probably better if you don't. And so paying attention to them and what they're interested in is much more effective. And even if you don't know, that's still super valuable to just commiserate with them. Yeah, that is super interesting. What caught your attention about that? That's a question that I'll often ask. What is it about? And you got to word it carefully, because it can easily come off as saying, who cares? You don't want to sound like that. But if you say, what caught your attention about that? Or you can say, I can see why that caught your attention, but what caught your attention about it? And then they tell you. And so learning the questions to ask or the things to say, that when you say, when you say something like that, it totally validates them. And when you say, I don't know, but I agree, it's a really curious thing. And I'd like to find out more. And again, like, it's cool if you can remember to, like, if you have your little notebook and you write it down and then you Google it when you get home. But again, I think it's very valuable not to Google stuff while you're out.
Jessica, did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, kind of, I think building off of that answer that you're talking about is my son really likes to be like the leader, our naturalist, if you will. And he's 6 right now, but obviously continues to develop in his love of nature, especially between my 3 kids. And so I'm wondering, do you have ideas of other ways to help him kind of take a leadership role when we're out, since he feels so like confident and excited in that position? Probably the middle child thing too. It's a place he feels like he's the center of things.
Sure. I have a middle child too.
I am a middle child too.
It really is a thing. It really is a thing, or at least in my experience. Well, I mean, I think a lot of times it's really, really great to be upfront and frank with a kid. You can say, I can see you like to be a leader. Because that does the other thing of putting in their head, they're a leader. And that's a valuable thing to think about yourself. So tell him, if he's running out ahead, is that something that happens, that he gets out of sight, or that he tries to control the conversation, or what? Or
partially it is that he decides kind of what needs to happen, and then he'll take off, or just kind of demand that everyone follow. And so I've been trying to help him kind of be like, yeah, you can be our guide today, but you need to like be leading the other people, not just commanding the other people.
Well, I think that's a valuable thing to say. And just note, like, I can see that you want to be the leader, and you're a good leader. And so for this part of the trail, why don't you be the leader? And then you may have to moderate with the other kids if they don't like that idea. But there are a couple of things. Now, I saw a thing circulating around on social media, and I shared it on the Taproot website too, or the Facebook page. Different things you can say instead of be careful. And Lydia, if you could maybe somehow put a link, but it's also on the Taproot Facebook page, that these different statements. And so for getting too far out ahead, well, and actually this reminds me, a lot of these things are common occurrences. Kids always go too far, like on the trail. It's just a thing that kids do. And so there are a few things, like when you get to a trail marker, stop. And this doesn't totally address your question, but consciously letting him be the leader and like just making it clear that, yeah, now he is the leader. Now you definitely will have to work out like different ways of making that work better with the other kids. But if he's commanding you, you can also just say how that feels. Like, I don't really like to be commanded like that. Can you find a different way to say that? Or, this is really important to you. Can you tell me why it's important to you? And can you do it in a friendly voice? Because that's what feels best to me. So just I think it would be helpful to acknowledge his desire to be a leader and acknowledge that that's actually a great thing, and that you really appreciate that about him. And now let's find a way that you can do that, and maybe for a limited time. And you can acknowledge too that, like, some of us would also like to be leaders, because it's fun, that. And so we'd like to be a leader too. So we should have a turn. Or you might say, we don't really want to have a leader right now. We kind of want to decide for ourselves what we want to do. So acknowledging his desire and framing it in a positive way, because it really is positive. He's confident and wants to be a leader. So if you can frame it in a way that gives him credit for it, and also just clarifies, like, we'd like you to be a leader in a way that feels good to us.
And I did send that link out in the chat. That is that little.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Those phrases make a huge difference. Instead of saying, be careful, this list that Lydia sent out just gives a bunch of other ideas. And it's not an exhaustive list. It's a very small list of what you can say instead of be careful. But basically it's like, do this activity. Like, I can see why you want to do this. It looks super fun. And wow, you're so brave for wanting to do that. Please be mindful. Watch, like, make sure you know where you're putting your feet. You know, different things you can say instead of be careful, or instead of slow down. Say other things that acknowledge their humanity and acknowledge their positive desire and what these things actually mean, without cramping their style.
Yeah, it really does make a difference of how you phrase certain things and how you come off. So and you'll find probably, you know, what works best
Right.
in your experience and what they like and what they respond to best. And
you know,
so,
that human thing about, like, there are certain things that are common to all of us, like the fact that kids run out too far ahead on the trail. But you might have to tweak it a little bit just for your child and your family. But I encourage you to try, like pay attention when you, especially if you're a parent who says be careful a lot when you're out with your kids. Consciously say some of these things instead, and just watch the reaction. Because a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times you'll see it'll be like kind of startling to the kid, like, because they know when you're going to say be careful. They already know it they can predict it. They know when to expect it, and they know they're going to ignore it. Pretty much. Again, this is a generalization, but it's pretty common. So if you say these other things instead, when they're expecting you to say be careful, it's fun. It's fun to see their reaction. But then you'll see, then you'll see a sort of a blossoming of confidence.
So, are there any other lingering questions? Any burning questions that anybody would like to ask before?
And actually, this part is really fun. If parents have, and I hadn't thought of this before, but if parents have specific like questions they'd like some suggestions on, and I'm really careful. I don't have the answers, but what I'll tell you is what's worked for me. And so I would welcome anybody to email me specific questions that you have that you'd like suggestions on what to try.
Absolutely. And I will send out Zac's email here in the chat, and perhaps, so Zac, if someone is interested in maybe getting their kid into Taproot, or there's you're an uncle or a grandparent, should they contact you?
Yes, and let me talk about that a little bit very quickly. One of the challenges, and I don't think you asked about challenges, but one of the biggest challenges is running the business part and the communication, website, registration, payments, receipts, all that stuff, which is not my strong suit, and I don't like it. And so consequently, it causes all kinds of trouble. But I don't know who all is tuned in now, but I'm sure there's some Taproot parents out there. And I'm excited to let you know that we actually have a professional web developer now working on our website and our registration system. Always before, I've been trying to cobble it together myself. So I say, believe it when you see it. However, it's in the process now. And pretty soon we're going to have, hopefully, all that stuff working much more smoothly. But in answer to your question, yes, you can email me. You can go to the website and find a lot of information on there if you're persistent in searching for it. But always feel free to email me. And our summer camp registration, that's a question on a lot of people's minds right now, because we're not open yet for registration, but it's coming very soon. I'm working on it. So hopefully by this weekend, we'll have the summer camp registration open.
Awesome. And Trisha, you have your...
Hi.
Yep.
Yeah. I just really quickly want to introduce myself to you, Zac. We share a lot of kids. My day job is I'm the director and teacher at Preschool, so I know a lot of our kids Really enjoy your program. And I just want to say thanks for everything you do for those kids in our community. My not day job is I have a nonprofit called the Lena Project, which was inspired by some of those kids that you and I share and know well. And so I've been meaning to make contact with you for some time. I'll probably be sending you an email at some point. So I wanted you to be able to associate my face with the email that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying hi. And did you say Lena Project?
The Lena Project, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I look forward to learning about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this was really interesting. Awesome discussion, Zac. Thank you so much for being here and bringing some understanding and awareness about your program and the importance of those outdoor experiences. We will have this talk uploaded to our YouTube channel in a couple days if you're wanting to watch or share, and that's going to be on the Burr Oak Land Trust YouTube page. So thank you everyone so much. We will be probably hosting another AMA about next month, and so hope to see you guys there as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.